Now, with our understanding of the box model and with some knowledge of what CSS rules look like, let's go ahead and let's start writing some CSS to style up our recipe page here. So this page that I have prepared ready to go. So we're going to take a look at how to grab out a certain element in the HTML and also how to apply styles to it. So there's a couple ways that this can be achieved. The way that I'm going to show you now will be to, in JSPin anyway, you just go to the CSS tab. And this is the way you would do it if you do want to have your CSS in a separate file, which generally is the more common way of doing it. We can take a look at a different way later on, but essentially it would just consist of putting our CSS inside of a style element in the head of your HTML. But in any case, if we are doing it this method, we will basically have a separate CSS file. JSBin takes care of kind of hooking it up to our HTML document, so we don't need to worry about that. Again, because JSBin is kind of a nice resource to start learning on. So what I want to do is I first of all just want to use kind of a very general selector. And we'll take a look at the couple of different selector types and why you might want to use one over the other. But the first thing I want to do is just kind of a general broad style across the entire page. And I want to do something like set a background color for the entire thing. Right now it just kind of has the default white background color. And what we can do is we can figure out how to grab this body element, because if you recall from the HTML section, body basically wraps everything on the page inside an opening body tag and a closing body tag, which means if we set the background for the entire body, it should also have an effect on the rest of these pieces that are, you can kind of consider them children of the body element. So these are all contained within the body element. So all we need to do, and we can just use a kind of general selector to grab this element. In this particular case, there's only one body element on the page, so that kind of simplifies things a little bit. So we can just grab body, like so. And then we have our opening and closing brackets, right? This is kind of our block that's going to execute. And essentially, this is where you set up your style. And I happen to know off the top of my head how to set the background color property, like so, background hyphen color. And that's kind of the format that CSS takes, right? It's property. If it's kind of a compound word or two words, you usually have a hyphen in the middle. And with CSS, they do use Americanized spelling. That's why color has no U on it. If you're coming from a non-US English-speaking country, it does use US standardized language, essentially. So in any case, background color, and then you can just type in whatever color you want it to be. So if you want to see something, it's going to be kind of hard on the eyes, we can just type in red here, for example. And here we see JSBin just kind of auto updates on the fly for us, which is convenient when you're developing. I also do have it out in my separate tab here, so I can just refresh this page and we can see that we are successful. Right? So we successfully loaded up some CSS, we grabbed the body, and we set the background color. Now there's a couple different ways you can set the color, right? Remember that you can do an RGB value, you can do a hex value, and there's a bunch of other neat built-in colors as well. For example, forest green is one such color. So again, it's just about kind of Googling, seeing what your resources are out there in terms of what names are available in CSS. So forest green is still a bit too green for my taste. Let's kind of tinker around a little bit. We can try something like light blue. Okay, I think that looks pretty okay at first glance. I think that'll do for now anyway. So cool, we just styled our first element using CSS. Now, remember when I mentioned that there's only one body element on the page, so this makes doing something like this easier. And what does that mean exactly? What did I mean by that? You know what, I'm just going to get rid of this output over here, just so it's more clear what we're doing. What I mean by that is, well, let's take another quick peek at our HTML here. So we have this header tag, right? We have a main, we have section, blah, blah, blah. So let's consider something like section. So we have one section element here, right, which wraps these things. And then in here we also have a section element. Not just one, but two or three. Right? These sections are all over the place. So we have a whole bunch of section elements on our page. So what do you think would happen if we tried to target section with our CSS here. So we target these section selectors, and we apply some kind of styling on it. Right, so let's see. Let's find out. So grab section, and again, probably quickest way to see some result is to set the background color. So let's try setting the background color. Background color is something we can really see. We'll do orange. Okay, so let's refresh over here and let's see what happens. Boom, refresh. Okay, and isn't that interesting? Right, so we can see it applied orange to a whole bunch of elements. Now, why did it do that? Well, it basically understood us grabbing every single element that is section, which is essentially most of the content on our page. Right? So pretty much everything is wrapped inside of a section. And that's something we really need to understand about CSS, is that these kind of generalized selectors, they could be selecting multiple things at once. In the first instance, we only have one body element. That's why we don't need to worry about any kind of side effects. But for our section, well, maybe we didn't want to color every single section orange. Maybe we only wanted to color certain sections orange. We're going to investigate different ways that we could approach that. But this is really just to show you that you are able to kind of grab multiple things at once, especially with these kind of very broad selectors. So this just goes in and grabs every single HTML element that is a section. Right, so I will get rid of that example because I don't actually want all my sections to be orange. But that could be useful, as you can imagine, if you want to set kind of a consistent style across your web page. So let's say, for example, you always want your paragraphs to have a certain font size. So you don't really like the default font size for these paragraphs. You want to change that with CSS. It's a pretty common scenario that you might run across. So how can you do that? Well, we kind of know already how to grab every single paragraph on this page. Right? So every paragraph we have wrapped in p tags, which means you can just use a selector like so. So we grab all the p tags on the page, and we can apply some styling. Font size, let's try, oh, I don't know, just off the top of my head, 50 pixels, like so. Right, so notice the hyphen. Let's refresh. Okay, so our paragraphs have now become quite a lot bigger, but it doesn't affect things like this. So what is that? What is that ingredients thing? Well, we can see that it's a UL. Right, so it's an unordered list with list items inside of it. Now that's not wrapped in a paragraph tag. So our CSS does not apply here or here, but it does apply here. And essentially, as you can see, it applies only to things that are wrapped in p tags, right? So it doesn't affect this h1, doesn't affect this, which I think is an h3. Oh, it's an h4. Actually, no, this one, u2. Yeah, that's an h3, right? So again, very easy to style up large parts of your app at once with CSS, as long as you know what your selectors are doing.